In opera, a world premiere is the ultimate test. It is how a company shows it has truly come of age. Even today, creating a completely new opera from scratch is rare. Only a few theaters in the world can take it on. Most of the great houses, from La Scala in Milan to the Metropolitan Opera in New York, usually stage established classics with scores and librettos that have not changed in centuries. A full-scale new production takes significant creative, logistical, and financial resources. Astana Opera is taking on that challenge head-on, showing it is ready to join the global cultural conversation. It recalls historic moments when the world's leading theaters unveiled masterpieces such as Verdi's Aida in Cairo. With Appak, daughter of the Kipchaks, the Kazakh stage steps forward as a global creator in its own right. The story is set 900 years ago, so this is not simply a staging. It demands a deep, scholarly, and artistic reconstruction of an entire era. The company acts here as both researcher and pioneer, proving it can do more than interpret the world's great repertoire. It can create large-scale original work of its own to an international standard. First of all, it is a real honor. You rarely get the chance to work with living composers. That brings a huge responsibility. It means they trust you, and you have to earn that trust. For any director, no matter your rank, your experience, your titles, it is a stroke of genuine luck. It is always an enormous education, and you never stop learning. I am very glad I got to be part of what I believe is a historic event.
Поучаствовать в таком, в общем-то, я считаю, историческом событии.
Working on Appak, daughter of the Kipchaks, turned the usual opera process inside out. The production became a living experiment. With Verdi or Puccini, you start with a finished score. It is set. Here, the music was being written in the rehearsal room in real time. The first draft was roughly half the length of the finished opera. The other 50%, the composing, the arranging, the orchestration, all of it happened during staging. Composers Alibi and Serikjan Abdinurov worked hand-in-hand with stage director Mikhail Pandavidze. In a way you almost never see. Pandavidze would block a scene and ask for music on the spot, for everything, from the battle choreography to a single dramatic pause. That led to constant creative clashes, arguments, and work pushed right to the limit. New passages, arias, duets written overnight and handed straight to the orchestra the next morning. The kind of extreme co-creation where a formal operatic score meets live rehearsal improvisation ended up bringing together two traditions that should not fit: the old European opera workshop and the deep improvisational instinct in Kazakh music. The show was built over 9 months of continuous change. What came out is a singular piece of work where the music and the drama on stage are inseparable. The music in this opera is contemporary, and it is full of national elements, because we come from the Kazakh school of composition, and it should be clear that this is a work by Kazakh composers. That is the first thing. At the same time, in the orchestra, in the harmonies, in the modes, everything is modern. So if I had to sum it up in one word, I would probably call it neoclassical. It has to speak to people, it has to be accessible, and at the same time, it has to feel contemporary. Bringing all of that together, finding that balance, that was one of the hardest tasks for us. The literary foundation of the production was radically reworked, turning Gabit Musrapov's classic play into a multi-layered libretto. The creative team moved away from a chamber love story toward a larger historical frame, a clash and a reconciliation between two civilizations. To support that shift, key roles were rewritten and new characters were introduced.
Мы еще отредактировали либретто, заострили какие-то линии.
We also reworked the libretto. We sharpened certain storylines and added others that we felt were underdeveloped, and they had to be there. Things like love of country, political intrigue, or the added figure of Makriban, Dari's wife who had never existed before, but she carries enormous dramatic weight. She was written rather sketchily at first, Sharaf too, by the way. We changed a great deal.
Например, жених, Appak.
For example, Appak's fiancé, Dangas, became her father and the Khan. That opened up a whole new story. This is not just a Kipchak girl, she is a Khan's daughter, and that changes everything. She carries responsibility for her own fate and for the fate of her country. Her destiny is inseparable from the destiny of her people. And from that comes so many strands, patriotic, humanistic, so much. At once, the drama becomes multi-layered, deep. What was an ordinary love story turns into a story about conflict and reconciliation between two civilizations. In our time, that feels very urgent.
Конфликта и мира двух цивилизаций.
The central idea of our production is this: you cannot defeat war with war. You cannot win a war. You can only stop it. That is the only way. Someone has to be the first to reach out. Someone has to be the first to extend a hand.
Это единственное, что возможно. Кто-то первый должен протянуть руку.
What sets this role apart from my previous roles in opera is that the heroine is a headstrong young girl, a warrior. Her father raises her as a fighter with a strong, fearless character. And then, at a certain point, her love for Nizami, her transformation into a tender wife, bringing all of that together, that was the hardest part for me. I searched a long time for the thread that connects the different sides of her. I cannot call this just a challenge. It was a real test. Here we learned to wear a saber. We learned to ride and to sing on horseback. Fencing alone is a great art, a great discipline itself. That is why I call it a test.
The world of the nomadic Kipchaks is rebuilt in the opera through ancient, archaic melodies drawn from Turkic tribes who lived 900 years ago. The opposing camp, the Orient, is recreated by the composers through a deep immersion in Azerbaijani folk music, traditional cues, and the intricate system of Mogam. Drawing that line between the two worlds took serious scholarly work. The Oriental color had to be rendered with real sensitivity, avoiding surface-level ethnographic pastiche. The result is a score where academic symphonic harmony and contemporary modal writing meet Oriental mellows head-on. This musical dialogue does more than illustrate the plot. It becomes a driving force in its own right, showing how the fusion of different cultural traditions can create a new, unified musical world for the production. We wrote it together. Some passages were written by Ali B, some by me. You cannot separate the two of us, because writing music is not just the notes. It is the piano score, the full orchestration, the arranging, the reworking, so much more. So this is our joint work. It is 16 years of work. When Astana Opera told us last year that they were going to stage the opera, we had to prepare a new edition. The director's demands were different. New numbers appeared, new dances, new arias. There were a great many changes.
Шын айтсам, біз әлі оны сезініп үлгерген жоқпыз. Біз әлі
To be honest, we have not really had time to take it in yet. We're still in the process of composing the opera. Because just yesterday we were told again, here we need 8 more bars, here we need another 16. It feels like we're still creating.
премьера болып жатыр деген әлі бізге не жоқ, сенім жоқ әлі.
To recreate the atmosphere of palace splendor and the stark life of the steppe, the company took a bold step. Rare instruments were built to order, and the orchestra musicians were trained in how to play them from scratch. Woven into the sound of the opera are the voices of the tar, the kobez, and the dombura, each one working as a kind of musical calling card for a specific character. The hardest part of the orchestration was keeping the balance exactly right so that the distinctive, authentic color of the folk strings sits perfectly with the soloist's voices. An unexpected and precise touch was the use of the harpsichord in the scenes set in the Oriental Palace. The production team drew on the idea of a shared root, a mutual influence between musical cultures, an idea first set out in the Middle Ages by the great thinker Al-Farabi. In his foundational great treatise on music, he describes in detail the common nature of plucked string instruments. In the context of the production, the fragile, crystalline sound of the harpsichord never feels out of place. It works as a subtle marker of court etiquette, power, and nobility. This acoustic experiment shows that the musical space of Eurasia has always been one, and that a thoughtful blending of timbres can easily erase the borders between eras.
Вы знаете, когда есть фантазия, оказывается...
You know, when you use your imagination, it turns out to be quite simple, because at heart, the instruments are the same. The harpsichord has strings, the tar has strings, the dombura has strings, the kobez has strings. They all have strings. They are all strung. The difference is just this: the soundboard of the harpsichord is fixed. Its size, its volume, it is constant. With the tar, it is completely different, and because of its shape, the sound becomes very airy, very mobile. In fact, each instrument carries the timbre, the character of its hero. And I think we managed to integrate these ethnic instruments into a classical symphony orchestra score very successfully.
Интегрировать вот эти этнические инструменты в партитуру именно классического симфонического оркестра.
Beyond the complex musical side of the production, the costume designers and set designers had to undertake an enormous amount of research. To recreate the atmosphere of 900 years ago on stage, they had to work through a vast body of historical material, studying archival documents and museum collections.
Мы вынуждены были, конечно же, много что прочесть, пересмотреть много
We had to read a great deal, look through a lot of material online. We studied the costumes, the way of life. It was a bit of a challenge. Maybe we have a few things that are not exact, but in theater there is theatrical truth and there is the truth of life. There is always a compromise between the truth of life and theatrical truth, you know.
правдой жизни, вернее, правдой жизни и правдой театра. Понимаете?
Particular attention in developing the visual style was given to the traditional costumes of Dagestan and Derbent, regions that have historically been a unique cultural melting pot. Over the centuries, great empires and states succeeded one another there, from the Khazar Khaganate and Persia to the Arab conquests, leaving an unmistakable imprint on local dress, ornamentation, and traditions.
Очень интересные.
The costumes are fascinating. We look through the traditional dress of Dagestan, of Derbent. So many different peoples live there now and lived there in the past. It is a real melting pot. Empires came and went, centuries changed hands. Persia, the Arab invasion, the Khazar Khaganate, you name it. The culture there is fascinating. The costumes are fascinating. The traditions are fascinating. It is very beautiful.
Костюмы, интересные традиции. Очень красиво.
For composers, Ali B and Serijan Abdinurov, work on this opera marked a radical creative turn from their previous large-scale historical project dedicated to Sakensi Fulin. That kind of shift in artistic language is a clear demonstration of the flexibility of the Kazakh school of composition, able to speak with equal conviction across very different eras. The difference between them is like night and day, because the opera Appak, Daughter of the Kipchaks, is about historical events and historical figures who lived 900 years ago. And Sakensi Fulin is one of our heroes, a man who lived 100 years ago. And the musical language is different too. In the first opera, we use melodies from Turkic tribes that existed 900 years ago, as well as the folklore of the modern Azerbaijani people. Whereas in the opera about Sakensi Fulin, there are Saken's own songs and contemporary music was used as well. The final stage of preparing Appak, Daughter of the Kipchaks, turned into a test at the very limit of human endurance for the entire creative team. In the run-up to the premiere, the authors, the production team and the performers were working non-stop, running on fumes. With constant last-minute adjustments, right up to the end, everyone had the feeling that the work was still unfinished and the approaching premiere felt almost unreal. The director and the conductor pushed every scene to an absolute emotional boil, which led to tough production arguments and enormous psychological pressure within the company.
Я знаю, что были не то что споры, доходило до истерики. Вот.
I know there were not just arguments. It got to the point of hysteria. And that is normal for the theater because in the theater, everything has to be brought to the boil. You know, when you make an alloy, you have to bring it to a certain temperature. It melts and you get the amalgam you need. It is the same here. Emotions pushed to the limit. Physical endurance pushed to the limit. People going without sleep for days. That is the only state in which you can create something worthwhile. You cannot do it to a schedule, because the director did not know in advance what was needed. I did not know what was needed either. As we went along, talking it through, discussing it, we found options, we found solutions.
Дело, как бы обсуждая, проговаривая, находили варианты, находили возможности решения.
And yet, it was precisely that atmosphere of extreme creative fusion that made it possible to mobilize every hidden resource the company had. After a marathon lasting many months, Astana Opera managed to make a real qualitative leap, presenting the public with a work of the highest international standard which, for its drive, its scale and its sheer impact, the creators themselves have called a true theatrical blockbuster. The project proved that the contemporary Kazakh academic stage is not only capable of functioning under the most punishing deadline, but of delivering at peak emotional intensity monumental works that set the direction for the art form.